Hey guys, Matt Marzillo here. This week we're going to be touching on two different financial functions used in Microsoft Excel. We have the payment function, or PMT function, and the future value function, or the FV function. And you can see here I have the syntax written out in column G for each of those functions. They're both using the same arguments, right? I mean, payment uses FV and FV uses payment, but outside of that, all the arguments are the same: rate, NPER, PV, and type. So before we actually get into using these functions and providing examples, I want to just briefly touch on defining each of these arguments. And once you have your head wrapped around what each of these arguments means, using the function becomes much easier. So over here to the left, let's start with the argument rate. So rate is the interest rate per period. So if we're looking to obtain an auto loan that has a 4% annual interest rate and make monthly payments, you would divide that 4% by 12, by the 12 months, and get 1/3%, or 0.33%. So you would enter that rate as 0.33% into the formula bar, right? So you want to make sure that you're considering the payment terms, or the fact that we're looking at 12 months, or paying monthly instead of annually. So that's the rate. NPER is pretty easy. It's the total number of payment periods, right? So if you have a 4-year car loan, and you're making the payment monthly, you're going to be paying 12 times 4, so you're going to have 48 periods, or the NPER argument would equal 48, right? Pretty simple there. Just making sure you're multiplying the number 4 by the 12 months. Next is the PMT function. This is the payment made each period, and it cannot change over the life of the loan. So for this past example, it would be the same amount all 48 periods, or all 4 years. Typically, the payment includes principal and interest. Make sure my spelling's correct. Interest only. There are no fees or taxes included in it, so it's just principal and interest. So, for example, the monthly payments on a $10,000 4-year car loan at a 4% rate would be somewhere around $216, and it would be that same amount for the entire term of the loan. FV is the future value, or the cash balance you want to attain after the last payment is made. If FV is omitted from the function, it's assumed to be 0. And really, to be honest, every time I've ever used this, FV is always going to be 0, right? If you take out a loan, your future value, your goal is to get it to 0. I can't think of a time that I've used this where I've used a non-zero future value, right? I mean, you're paying off your student loans. You're not going to pay them down to $1,000 and just leave them, right? You're gonna pay it down to 0. And for all the examples that we're using, future value is always going to be 0, at least in terms of the payment side of things. So the present value is the total amount a series of future payments is worth now, also known as the amount borrowed, right? So it's a little confusing maybe, but present value is essentially how much. So if we're talking about a car loan, if you take out a $10,000 car loan, your present value is $10,000, right? That's how much you have. That's the size of the equity, right? It's a $10,000 loan. So if you kind of think as present value and future value being at opposite sides of the actual loan term. Okay. Lastly, we have type. Really, to be honest, kind of irrelevant. You're using a 0 or a 1 to indicate whether or not you're making the payment at the beginning or the end of the term. You can pretty much disregard this for our purposes. We're pretty much going to be focusing on these other 5 arguments in these next couple examples. Okay, guys, that's the arguments. The next couple videos are going to be touching on the actual functions. Thanks a lot.